So we started to see all these mental coaches, therapists, and the whole thing was like, hey, give me 6 weeks and I'll make you okay with being silver. And he looked and he went, wait, no.
I don't want to be okay.
I don't want to be okay with it.
Yeah.
I want gold.
Yeah.
He said there's nothing worse than getting silver. Mm-hmm. Give me bronze and I'd be okay with it, right? But not silver. We should not be okay with underperforming based on our ability. Ever. But we should sit there and go, well, what happened? And we should understand, why did I not perform where I wanted to perform?
We've already started, so I want to just continue that, right? Because this will preface what we're going to talk about. So can you real quick for the audience explain what's currently going on with you so that we can break down your mental state and how you're getting through this?
So my daughter, Natalie, she just got out of the ICU. So she has a rare disease. It's called Pyrox D1. So she's the 17th person to ever be diagnosed with it.
17th ever.
Youngest by far. There's no cure for it, but because of it, her muscles just don't work. So she's in a wheelchair. She can't clear her throat, can't really move much. So when she gets sick, we tend to have to go to the ICU for usually it's about 7 to 14 days. This one just happened to be 5 days, which surprisingly, Maria and I were talking, was a lot harder because it was kind of like a blitz. After 14 days in the ICU, you at least get into a rhythm.
Yeah, you get your structure.
So we never got into a rhythm, and it was just a grueling 4 or 5 days. And that's why I think like now my head's full. I got whatever I got from the ICU.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think
sickness comes from being at the hospital.
That I don't even know if it's that, dude. I think that high of stress and that high of adrenaline dump, I think your central nervous system just says, I'm out for a little bit, and then whatever we usually fight, you're just feeling the effects of.
It could be that. It's funny. We forget how big of a deal it is because we're like, oh, call 911. They come. They put her in the ambulance. We go to the hospital. And when you do that 5, 6, 7 times, with a 6-year-old, it becomes just a new way of doing things.
Yeah, and your new normal.
Like my son was excited to let the firemen in. You know what I mean? Like you have to find a way to play it so it becomes the new norm because Maria's the one who has all the good little word lines, and she came up with this concept called Let Your Fight Shine. And Let Your Fight Shine is all about how when Natalie rolls into a room, her fight shines. Like you can't help but see what she's fighting with. But yet when you and I roll into a room, no one knows what we're dealing with. And how much better would the world be if we all just let our fight shine? If people just saw what we were struggling with.
Yeah.
And the way we'd be able to connect from human to human, the way we'd be able to impact each other, help each other. I mean, it would be a whole different world than what we live in now, which is the exact opposite.
No doubt, exactly.
Here's all the good, and that's why when we were talking, I'm like, man, I feel terrible. Like I'm gonna finish this, go home, and go back to sleep.
Yeah.
But that's the point of what the message we're trying to show.
That's right. That's right.
Is it's not about being perfect, and that's the problem. Is when we sit back and wait for these things to go. This is just the life that we've been given, and I'm gonna enjoy every second of it. And we can't allow these external circumstances to completely derail the rest. I've given keynotes in hospitals. I've given, I've done workshops in hospitals. I mean, we can't stop ourselves from living the life we're supposed to live because of the situations that are thrown in front of us.
Dude, not only that, but talk about your strength. Everything that you've done up until now has built you to the person that's able to handle this. And ultimately, this is your reality. There is no running away from this reality. You have love for your daughter that you're going to do anything in your power to help her with. And that's not going away. You're not going to drive that under the rug and just say, everything's fine, we're cool, you know? And that's exactly what you just mentioned. That's why it's so impactful, is because everybody does do that. They tell you their day is fine, even though they've just every strength in their bones to be where they're at right now. But they don't tell you that part. They say, yeah, everything's cool.
It's the F word. I'm fine.
Yeah.
No one's fine.
No doubt.
No, life's too hard to be fine. Like, you got something going on, and we need to be able to share that. When I work with clients, they always try to show me how I'm doing good. No, you're not.
Yeah, that's why I'm fucking here.
You're not doing good. And I get that you're not doing good. It's not bad that you're not doing good, but life is hard.
Matt, real quick, brother. Pronunciation of your last name?
Granados.
Okay, I got that right. Matt Granados. Real quickly, tell everybody, what you do, just so that we can preface that and then, get some spotlight on what you do.
So we have a consultancy called Life Pulse. where we just have a systematic approach that's scalable and duplicatable to solve any and all people problems. So it's just, how do you get people to do what they're supposed to do?
Yeah.
We have a system that does exactly that, whether it's with individuals one-on-one or it's with corporations, doesn't matter. What I always say is we have a way to take high potential people and turn them into high performers, and then high performers into sustainable performers. Because normally high performers, they fall apart.
Yeah.
But we have a way to actually sustain that. And it's by taking small steps on a weekly basis, planning your week out effectively, and then actually taking the actions you need.
Dude, no BS. Like, I am the worst at that. I'm one of those high performers that can perform highly, but because I'm disorganized or I'm not as fine-tuned with the planning and such, you know, I'll have a week where I feel very unproductive, or I feel. And when you and I sat down, you know, you had to force your help onto me because I'm just so damn stubborn, and you know that you the journal you gave me to the hour you gave me, like, it was literally life-changing. I've been using it every week since. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, oh, dude, and that's why I wanted to sit down and talk to you, is because you hear a lot about these things. You hear a lot about making charts and plans, and there's a gazillion journals out there, like, but not the way you've done it.
Yeah.
And not as effective as you've done it. And I can say that because I've seen a lot of them.
No, and that's the biggest thing, was we call it reverse planning. That's what we teach. The way we've been told to plan is you list out what you need to do, and then you just do what you want to do. You kind of cherry pick, and you stay away from things you don't want to do.
Right.
The way we plan is you list out what you want to do, then you list out what you've committed to do, what you need to do, and then you only do what's actually important. And to have that frame of mind that if you're not getting your thoughts out on paper and you don't have a strategy behind your plan, you're not actually planning.
Right.
There needs to be a strategy. And that's what we found when we came in to started teaching. No one really knows how to do it.
Right.
And when we came in and started doing it, now not only can one person do it, but we can duplicate it all throughout it, literally entire companies.
And that's what helps you get through these situations with Natalie.
Oh, I mean, that's the biggest. This whole thing didn't take off until we had to use it with Natalie.
There you go.
Because what happens is there's 3 filters I put every single thing through before I put it in front of a client. Number 1, it's business. Does it work in the business world? Yes, check. Then it's personal. Does it work in my personal life? Yes. And then finally, family. Does it work with my family? And if I can't get something that works in all 3 of those, it's not worth sharing with somebody. Because if it doesn't transcend work, it's never going to stick. So we do a lot of this stuff where we go into companies and they bring in all these consultants, they bring in all this stuff to put knowledge in front of people, and it never sticks because no one cares about it. It's all about work. No one cares about work. Yeah. But when you could teach the same stuff in work as what happens at the gym and what happens in your spiritual life and what happens in your relational lives, it's the same structure. Success is the same in all areas of life. How you go after and how you approach it is good, and follow through is key.
So that's the whole premise of the concept is, you know, not only how you do one thing is how you do all things, but if what you're doing doesn't help you all around in your life, well, then it's, even if it works, it doesn't.
And I don't have the freedom for it not to work in all areas of my life because my life is so intertwined, right? So when you go, hey, we're going to the hospital and I need to be able to do what needs to be done, we can't stop business. As an entrepreneur, if we don't work, we don't eat. And you can't sit there and say, hey, we're in the hospital for 3 weeks, so we're just not going to work for 3 weeks. That's just not an option. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? We have 2 companies. We have a foundation that we run, and we can't not work just because life's hard.
No BS. If I didn't know you personally or Maria personally and what you guys were going through, I saw Maria working out here. Yeah. I saw you working out here. I saw Maria in the classes. Had I not known you guys personally, I would have never known anything was going on.
Yeah, and part of it is because it's not a sad story.
There you go.
It is. When people hear about, it's funny. I always say people try to lend us their sorrow, and we don't need it. Like, I get that you feel bad, but don't feel bad for us. We're good. And we've had times where Natalie has died and come back to life, and certain people can't handle that. Mm-hmm. We can, right? Because we serve a higher power than ourselves. And as we go through these crazy times and crazy swings, there's no way I could have handled this on my own. There's no way. But we don't want to sit here and tell everybody about our struggles just so they feel bad for us.
Okay, so how do you distinguish the two? Because I think maybe that's why everybody does cover up their struggles,
Right.
is because you either play hella victim or you're so worried about not being a victim
Right.
that you don't want anyone to know your dirt.
So the issue is just don't hide it. You don't need to vomit on somebody, but you don't need to hide it. So if you have, I mean, you knew what was going on because I told you what was going on, but it wasn't like, oh man, Bart, I can't come work.
Yeah.
You know what it was? It didn't come with excuses.
That's right.
And I think that might be the difference. Is you should share what's going on, but it's not an excuse. Hey, I'm not feeling well, so I can't come do this podcast. That's an excuse. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So maybe that's the biggest difference. And then how do you actually navigate it is there's certain people in your life that you can share stuff with. And there's other people in your life that you can't share stuff with.
Or shouldn't.
Right. And because of that, we don't want to just vomit all of our issues on people, but be okay sharing them. And the reason why is because through your weakness, other people can learn as well.
Yeah, of course.
Like, and we can relate on, it's much easier for me to relate on your weakness with my weakness than your strength with maybe a strength of mine.
No doubt. No doubt. I mean, think about how many times you'll have a situation where you hear someone struggle, right? You have a friend who's admitting that they're having a really hard day, but in that admittance, they're also explaining, and I also got this done, I still got this done, I still got this done, right?
Yeah.
You then go to your next struggle, and you have a plethora of examples of people that you respect and that you know
Yeah.
that don't use struggle as the stopping point.
Right.
You go, I too can get through this because I have examples of people I respect getting through their shit.
Right.
But if I didn't know their shit, then I'm assuming I'm the only one with shit, and it's okay for me not to go forward because I have shit today.
Well, and the other part that's hard about it is I'm really good at being transparent. Like, you'll know what's going on in my world. You know if I'm feeling good or not. And I think most men, we are good at being transparent, but we're not good at being vulnerable.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It
It's
does,
a
but tell me
huge
the
difference. So transparent is I'll tell you what's going on. Vulnerable is I'll tell you how it's impacted me. So I just told everybody what happened to Natalie, but not once, and nor will I, right? Not that it's good or bad. It doesn't come to me naturally. All right, so how does it make you feel when you jump into an ambulance with your daughter? And the answer is I don't know, because I kind of just suppress that down.
Correct.
Because I'm in dad mode. I'm in survival mode.
That's the word. Women teach how to love, men teach how to survive.
Right.
And the way we do that is we do emotions later.
And what happens, I call them free-floating emotions. This is why they're so dangerous, is because they'll come out.
Yeah.
You just don't know when.
You're right.
And you don't know with who.
Yeah.
So they're there, but they're free-floating, meaning they're just waiting to come out. Then all of a sudden, my daughter who's in a wheelchair fires me off, and I get angry at her.
Yeah.
How could I yell at her?
Yeah.
Right? Or my son, or my wife, or a friend, or a client.
And then we hit that guilt and shame, right?
Exactly.
The male guilt and shame.
And that's where the concept comes in of just being able to sit there and be in it. And I'm still not good at it. I mean, I would say I don't do it at all. But it was funny. Maria and I were doing one of our podcasts together, and it was all about being emotionally stable. And how is Matt emotionally stable, right? We jump in a helicopter or an ambulance. We go to take Nat wherever it goes. And we have the same process. We call 911. I go with Nat. Maria follows, whether it's a helicopter or an ambulance or whatever it is. And we've done them all. And I said, wait a minute. About 20 minutes into this episode about me being emotionally stable, I went, I'm not emotionally stable at all. I'm emotionally suppressed.
Right.
Maria, you're emotionally stable. You deal with the emotions, and you're freaking out, and you still walk through.
Yeah.
That's more impressive
I agree.
than what I do.
Right.
I just shut it all down. And with all that, it comes to the fact that you need to be able to address this stuff, whether you do it in the moment, which I don't. But what I also don't do is I don't go back and address it.
Yeah.
I'll get it later. I know I'm not going to get to it later.
Well, I mean, it's over. What's the
What's
point
the
of
point?
doing it now?
And the point is the fact that just because it's over doesn't mean the trauma's didn't happen.
Right.
And there's an element of going back to that and actually finishing what those emotions started.
There's a analogy I use in my own mind whenever I'm talking to myself or to anybody else about certain, let's call them negative situations or negative emotions. I'll use an example. Like my dog died spontaneously. We left to drop my mom off at the airport. We come back and she's dead on the ground.
Oh, geez.
Like it was. And the other dog, we had two. The other dog was the sick one. So Cora, my lab, She was my sweetheart. Whenever I'm paralyzed, she's laying at my side. Like, she was my guardian angel. And, you know, and she just abruptly, just her appendix burst or something, like something weird, right? And, dude, and that was my first time I ever lost a loved one like that close. I have never really had a family, so I never really had lots of, like, my dad passed away, but I didn't have a relationship with him. So this was the first time where I'm like, I didn't want to lose you yet, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, that was my first time trying to deal with those negative emotions. And at first I couldn't, because it was actually a very tragic or traumatic event.
Right.
We came home, my wife started screaming bloody murder. She saw my mom feed her like a little bone before we left, so she started screaming like, your mom killed our dog, your mom killed our dog, and just like screaming. Mika's an infant, so she started crying. Like,
right.
So it was just a huge event. So I had to cut my shit and just deal with it. I had I tried reaching down her throat. All these things. All that to say, it's 3 or 4 days later, and I'm starting to feel really sad.
Yeah.
And I'm like, thinking to myself, I go, I got to get all of this sad out now.
Yeah.
Because if I just say I'm fine and just go back to shit, like, it's going to stay with me for a really long time.
Right.
So I made a slideshow of every picture of me and her had together. I put the saddest song I could possibly find, like the ASPCA fucking commercials, you know? And I just sat and watched this just heart-wrenching slideshow for like 4 hours, bro. And I just bawled for 4 hours straight.
And I think if more, I would never even think to do that. And there's time when Natalie died and came back to life, I went to go see a therapist specifically because I looked at my heart rate never changed.
Yeah.
And that's scary.
Yeah, sure.
Like, if your daughter dies, you should probably physiologically change a little bit.
Yeah.
Nothing changed.
Yeah.
And when I went to go talk to this therapist, and she basically said, hey, you process things really fast.
Mm-hmm.
She said, you process things kind of like a Corvette versus a Ford Taurus. I said, but that's a good thing. She said, no, it's not. Not if you want to actually enjoy life.
Because you fly by it.
You fly right by it. So is it a good thing when your daughter dies? Absolutely. I was in a perfect position to help her come back to life, and we had to resuscitate her, and it all, thank God, worked out perfectly fine. But all the other parts of life that I fly past and don't get to sit back and actually enjoy, it's not as much fun.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're in a Corvette, it's fun to fly fast, but you're missing all the trees and
you're missing everything that's worth driving by.
Yeah.
So that's the part of just taking your time and stepping back. And the other thing that's come to me, even just doing the work that we do with all of our clients, is, man, how much is enough? How much do we need? How big do we need to go? Like, we've been in this mindset of grow, go, bigger, 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 bigger. And when you have a daughter like Natalie, the reality is of, like, do we really need that much more? And we've had multiple successful businesses. Like, we've been okay in what we've done. But then when you sit there and go, maybe we don't need as much as we think we do. And we could sit back and what I'd rather do is not get everything done, but get the right things done.
There you go.
Which is the whole point of what our system does and what we teach the clients is, wait a minute, it's not that hard to actually do what needs to be done. But if we have to find a way to consistently do it every single week, and when you do it every single week, at the end of the year, that's 52 times of you doing it.
Yeah.
You're going to progress.
Well, then you're also putting into you're keeping things into proper perspectives and priorities.
Right.
Right? Because again, like, if I cared more about Project Power growing than spending time with my daughter, yes, we'd be further along right now, right? But that list, that whole journal, it doesn't pertain to just one aspect of your life, but your whole life.
Right.
And you get to really hone in on, I'm not upset that I'm, in the grand scheme of things, 2 weeks behind the ball of growing Project Power.
Right.
Why? Because I was able to create these 17 memories with my daughter in that meantime. Right? And if you're not focused, then all you're doing is looking at the opposite, which is what you're not doing.
Right.
And that's what kills a lot of men's confidence and their ability to stay, in a leadership type position in their minds.
Right.
You look in the mirror and you just look at what you're not doing versus what you are.
I think it's the biggest weakness most men have, is they sit there and they focus on who they think they should be versus who are you.
Yeah.
And when we actually have that conversation, we recognize that when I go to work with clients, I say humans are so unpredictable that they're extremely predictable. That's why we're able to do what we're able to do. Is although yes, you as an individual, very unpredictable, but a group of 100 people, extremely predictable.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Like
yes, it does.
An individual, and because of that, that's why we can scale our stuff so fast and so large. Because all of us, you and I act the same way. You and I have the same desires. You and I have the same wants. You and I are motivated in the same ways. If you want to really break it down, you'll see little nuances as to what really motivates you and what really motivates me. But in the grand scheme, 30,000-foot view,
No doubt.
we're motivated by the same thing.
Absolutely.
We all naturally have this concept of a desire. And we wrote a book called Motivate the Unmotivated. But in that book, the whole concept is that motivation is not a character trait. It's a state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's a state of mind, we can change it whenever we want.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
But in order to do that, we have to be okay with recognizing where we are, no matter how good or bad it is, versus where we want to be. Kind of to your point of the guys looking in the mirror going, I see who I want to be or I don't see who I want to be, and I don't want to even address it because I don't want to fail trying.
Yeah.
Right? And you had that line up there on the board. When we started the foundation, the doctors who we were working with were like, hey, we don't want to burden you. You got all the stuff with your daughter. We don't want to burden you with asking you to raise money. And I said, look, you don't understand. She's the 17th person to ever have it, youngest by far. There is no cure in sight, let alone an option that we can move forward on. I would rather try and fail versus not try and fail.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's like, whoa, that's profound. I'm like, it is, but it's real. But yet all of us, when we get outside of an extreme situation, it's like we throw all that away.
Yeah. 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 I mean, if you put yourself into almost any scenario, I'll use a survival one, for example. You're stuck in the woods. Like, wouldn't it be your human nature to just every day try to get out and versus one day just say, well, I won't be able to, and just sit there forever and just wait to die?
I think in a survivalist concept, I don't. It's funny. We do this thing called survival shapes when we teach how to actually structure your day, and it's all about, to your point of, I want to get out. Mm-hmm. We were working with the Air Force, and the survival specialist was there, and I asked him. I said, what do you do if you're lost in the woods? And this goes to what you're saying and what I'm saying of how is enough. And he said, there's 4 things you do. I said, all right, what's that? He said, number 1, you find shelter. Number 2, you find water. Number 3, you find food. And I said, well, what about the 4th? He said, well, the 4th is you stay put.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what do you mean you stay put? He said, because there's a better chance that the United States military finds you than you find us. He says, we always find the campsite. We don't always find the camper. And to that point of what would most guys do is, I got to go.
I got to go.
I got to swim. I got to get out of here. And this is where it comes with the reality of you don't have to. We have to think about all of our situations before we act as people. I have water. I have shelter. I have food. Why do I have to leave?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, you're good.
Yeah.
And I think about that in our everyday world. Well, I got to do this. I got to grow the gym.
Yeah. I got to get out of this. I got to get out of here.
But why?
Why do you have to?
And I think if we were just to ask ourselves that question,
yeah.
But why? Well, because. Not a good answer.
Not it.
Right? Like, we got to grow the gym. Why do you have to grow the gym? Well, because we got to make more money. Why do you have to make more money? Well, because I got to, okay, I don't have an answer to that. And it's because you have insecurities that you're feeding into, and you're letting it dictate how we have to go.
That's right.
So the question of why would you try to leave if you had those 3 things, right? Food, water, and shelter, would be because you're afraid that you're not going to be found. And again, please understand, if anyone on this thing is lost in the woods, don't take this as advice to sit there. But it's just, I think.
But that's the advice.
We don't sit there and think about all of the situations. And that's something that I think we would do a lot better with. I had a client of mine who's a partner at an accounting firm, and we're having a conversation. And I said, let me explain what goals are. Like, goals are not what you're able to do. Goals are what you're going to do. Mm-hmm. And because she was such a perfectionist that she would set these huge goals. And I said, why are you setting them so big? Because I know I can. Yeah, but you're not going to. I know you're not going to because you haven't done it the last 4 months we've worked together. So let's set them based on what you're going to do and not just these artificial dreams.
Yeah.
It's like if I came in here and I was like, Bart, I want to lose 50 pounds. You're like, all right, man.
We start with 1 pound.
Let's see and again, what is it we're really looking to do? And the goal is, here's what I'm willing to do based on my situation. And too many times we're in this mindset of you need to set goals that are just so big.
But you got to get out. You got to get out of your spot. You got to get out of your spot.
I would so much rather people make small goals every week than a big goal once a year and never do it.
Yeah.
And that's what happens.
Yeah.
And that's why our system works so well, is because it's small steps every single week that gets to the end result much faster than if I was to sit here and go, man, I'm going to go to the gym 3 days a week for 52 weeks versus I'm going to lose 20 pounds. If I had one of those two goals, the 3 days a week is a much higher likelihood of me doing something.
Dude, so you're part of a 6-man group that signed up with me for training, right? And so we're not doing anything in person. I'm just writing your guys' plans, and we're checking in on every month. So the very first plan I wrote you guys, across the board, all of you guys said, like, this is pretty simple, and it's, not too hard, quote unquote, and all that shit. And I smirked because I'm like, I know that. Like, I understand. I'm not naive to the fact that this isn't the hardest workout plan I've ever written.
Right.
But it's what you guys needed at that time to
Very
get the
much
ball
so.
rolling, right?
And it felt good because it allowed me to get here, not overwork. Because that's my issue when I work out.
Of course. Everybody.
I overexert myself.
Bro, you're stuck in the forest. You're going to go 50 miles the first day to get out.
Yep.
And you can't even move the next day. You move 2 miles the next day.
And that's such a great analogy to what we're talking about here is, man, just if you could take small steps every day, you have a much better chance of getting where you want to go.
That's right.
Than a fast leap. It's short-term intensity versus long-term consistency. The second is what allows you to actually succeed.
That's right.
The first, you'll burn out.
And learn. Think about how much more you learned when it was slow, methodical, something you could handle. When you can handle it, guess what you do? You pay more attention.
Yeah.
Because you're not frantic. You're not just trying to get through it. You're not trying to move the weight as fast as you can. You're not
That's
just
good, man.
You know what I'm saying?
And that was very true. And I think that's where we try to do so much so fast.
That's right. That's
and
right.
why is that?
Again, it's because we just don't want to be where we're at.
Bingo. We are so self-conscious of being anything less than where we are. Mm-hmm. But in reality, that's who we are.
And you got to be okay with that.
You got to be okay with where I have the way we set goals is a very weird way of setting goals. We call them value-based gap goals, right? So it's almost like a goal statement versus just a goal.
Okay.
So we tie in our core values, what we get from it, holistically, who are you, Bart, as a whole, and that's your goal. But there's a key part of it that we do. We call them gap goals. So the human body likes to fill gaps. We like to fix things. We like things to come to completion. In fact, there was a study done by her name was Dr. Ziegernicht. And the best way to describe this is if I go dun 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 dun,
Dun dun.
right? You're gonna finish it.
Got it.
And if I don't finish, you're gonna finish it.
Got it.
And if I don't finish it, dun 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 dun.
In my mind.
In your head, you're still doing it
because
our brains want things done to completion.
Yeah.
So because of it, when we teach goals, we start with a benchmark. Where are you today? And then where do you want to go? That's in our goal. So for example, I weigh 215. I want to be 200. I'm able to not only see where I am, admit the reality, which is a huge part of it, but also 3 weeks go by and I'm still 210. I'm 10 pounds away from where I want to be, but I've lost 5. Mm-hmm. And you can actually experience the progress.
Yeah.
If we don't recognize where we were, you're never going to get the progress.
Yep.
The progress is that is what motivates you,
of course,
to keep going.
That's right.
But we sit there and go, I'm so far away from the end goal. Like I always tell people, the end goal, that's like the finish line. But you don't, like when you're running long distance races, you don't see the finish line. Mm-hmm. All you see is the path in front of you. Yeah. And that's what you need to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to force people to take before pictures, and I have to force them to do it as ugly as they possibly can.
Right.
But no one wants to. When you're in the beginning, you're trying to mitigate how bad things are to make yourself feel better.
Right.
But once you make progress, you wish you had started further behind.
Yeah.
Right? So they go a month in and they look fucking great compared to when they started. And they're disappointed they didn't take a worse fucking picture day one.
Yeah.
Right?
It's crazy. We had another person who, again, she was starting a whole new project. She's an HR professional in a company, and she couldn't bring herself to say that she was at 0% of the goal. She's never even started it.
She wouldn't admit it?
She couldn't. She felt like a failure.
That's
That's how broken we are. Like
Yeah.
we are, and I sit there and go, look, we have to be okay failing. Like I've practiced failing a lot.
Find another 0.
Literally, I find that I have failed really. I do it a lot,
Yeah.
and I become okay with it.
That's right.
And because of that, understanding the progress of where I am, that only shows me where I can go.
That's right.
But if I don't take a second to go, all right, where are we right now? Hey, our marriage is a train wreck. Listen, here's where we are, and it's not great, but I don't hate you anymore.
Yeah.
Or physically, I can't even do X, Y, and Z, and now I'm at least showing up to the gym. We don't take those small wins.
No, we don't.
Because who cares? Who wants to see that? Because on Facebook, you don't see small wins. You see all the big good stuff, the highlight reel.
Yeah.
But you have to realize that the highlight reel, you get to experience in your life every single day if you actually were grateful and saw what it was.
And present.
I did this thing back when I was trying to in school. I wasn't able to get. I didn't feel like I was doing enough to get where I wanted to go fast enough. And a mentor told me, he said, write out what he called a victories list. And the victories list was just 5 things every day that I did that was good and made me like, what did you do that was good?
Proud of yourself.
Whatever it was, right. And it was things like I held a door for someone. They were super elementary. But what I started realizing was as I started looking at this list, this victories list, and you do 5 a day, so you got 15 or you got 25 a week, right? And you got 100 a month. And you start doing this thing. After a couple months of doing it, you go, wait a minute, I'm doing a lot of stuff to progress where I want to go. Holding someone's door, that's not going to progress me where I want to go. But hitting this number here and doing this here, and we forget how much those small incremental steps are valuable. We just look over them,
Yeah.
like we just should.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. We don't celebrate the little wins.
Do you think, though, that in today's day and age specifically, because it's easy for us to create new circles of high successful people and kind of lose the connection to like the every person, because I think in the group that I have now, it's very different than the group I had when I was 22. Right?
Yeah.
And I am still on social media, so I do still see what the 22-year-olds post and this and that. I think that there's also, on the flip side of that, a huge amount of people who are trying to get accolades for not doing much.
Right.
And I believe that because we don't separate ourselves very much, we don't go, oh, that's them and we are us. We have a fear of celebrating too early. We have a fear of celebrating the small wins makes us complacent, right? There's like this oversight that we have on progress where if you haven't won the championship, then you haven't done shit.
Right.
And that's a big driving goal for a lot of ambitious people. And I don't know if that's the reason why we're having these type of conversations, because they're true. But I do know that that's a huge fear for most people who are able to accomplish things.
Yeah. So all that is ego. And if you're going to be driven by your ego, you're going to be miserable your whole life. Right?
So what do you mean? Why is that?
So if you're driven by your ego, meaning I can't celebrate the small wins because they're not big enough for other people to see them as worth celebrating. That is a miserable way to live your life.
But if you know you can win the championship, right?
Yeah.
Like you know you can, and you don't, then you go, even though I won the, levels below it, that's not what I'm able to do.
Right.
So I fell short of what I'm able to do.
Yes. So that is accurate, and you should feel like you fell short.
Okay.
Because you didn't live up to what you could do.
Okay.
I had a mentor of mine who his name's Lanny Basham, and he was a marksman. So he went to the Olympics in 1980 and then 84. And in 1980, he came in second, got the silver medal. So we started to see all these mental coaches, therapists, and the whole thing was like, hey, give me 6 weeks and I'll make you okay with being silver. And he looked and he went, wait, no,
I don't want to be okay.
I don't want to be okay with it.
Yeah.
I want gold.
Yeah.
He said there's nothing worse than getting silver.
Mm-hmm.
Give me bronze and
Yeah.
I'd be okay with it, right? But not silver. And so what Lanny did was he went back and he became a whole mental coach. And that's what he does, where he never shot a gun. He just closed his eyes and envisioned how he was going to shoot perfect score, then came back and got the gold medal. It's a great story. But all of that being said, we should not be okay with underperforming based on our ability. Ever. But we should sit there and go, well, what happened? And we should understand, why did I not perform where I wanted to perform at? But we shouldn't sulk over it.
No doubt.
We shouldn't be, woe is me.
Correct.
Or I'm better than that. Well, you aren't better than that.
You're not today.
Look, there's the proof.
That's right.
You did not perform.
Yep.
Why? Then the question comes back to that. Why didn't you perform?
Yeah.
Well, I felt like garbage. Okay, cool.
That's what you got to fix.
Yeah. You were sick. You were this, that, or another, whatever it might be. Like, that's totally fine. Or let's say, for example, you're like, man, like for Lanny, when he got silver, was he didn't realize that the whole world was watching him. He got nervous. He didn't like put 2 and 2 together till he came out and realized, holy smokes, everyone's watching.
It hit him.
So he understood why that happened. We're so afraid, to your point of where are our flaws, we're afraid to investigate. We're afraid to like re-examine.
Dude, sitting down with you with that journal thing, you don't understand. Like that, I went full face into the trauma right there.
Yeah.
Because I know that I am missing things here and there because I'm not writing my shit down on paper. Right. But I've been able to accomplish a great deal with that being said.
Yeah.
So why the hell would I start scratching scabs, getting them to bleed all over again?
Yeah.
They've already scabbed over. Maybe because I could get rid of the scab altogether.
Bingo. And just because it's scabbed over doesn't mean the infection's
That's
gone.
what I'm saying.
And I think that's the part that we sit there and we think we can do it all up here.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, I say, how do you do a puzzle? And they said, what? I said, you ever done a puzzle? I said, yes. Have you ever done a puzzle without taking it out of the box? And they're always like, what? I was like, exactly. You do a puzzle a very specific way. You take it out of the box, you put it on the table, you spread it out, and then you do the corners, the edges, then you work your way in. If you're not planning your week that way, you're at a complete disadvantage to everybody else in the world. You cannot process things up here. You cannot. There's no such thing as multitasking.
Yep.
That's been proven wrong and wrong again. At best, you can call it partial tasking. Right? You could partially do 2 things, but you can't multitask. You can't give 100% to everything. And when you sit back and recognize, wait a minute, number 1, I'm not as busy as I think I am.
Right.
But it's all up here, so I feel busy. Number 2 is I don't know what I really should be doing versus what I'm just doing because I think it should be done. And then number 3 is you have no strategy. You have no strategy and you're drifting through life. That's going to be a terrible week. And eventually you're going to go far enough in your trajectory where you're not going to be happy where you are.
Yeah. I mean, anyone who gets really honest with themselves and does want to do better, like in any facet of their life, it always comes back down to that strategy, that planning, and then getting it out of your head. Because the same thing, you really want to get in shape and you walk into the gym, everything that you need is in here.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Every single thing that you should be doing is in here.
Yeah.
But you have no strategy. You have no plan. You work out for an hour doing random shit. You're going to get tired.
Yep.
Man, I'm so sore. It's not leading to anything.
That's so true.
You know, I know how to work a bolt and a wrench, and I go take apart my engine. I have no idea, no strategy, no idea how an engine goes back together. I'm going to work it out there for 14 hours. Will I have a car? No.
Right.
I have nothing. I'm just tired.
And that's where it comes with the high potential to high performers, or high performance to sustainable. The high performers to sustainable are probably my favorite people to work with. And the reason why that is because they've done so much with no strategy.
Yeah.
And when I put a strategy to it, they go, oh my goodness. I'm like calm. I can take a break.
Yeah.
I can rest.
Yeah.
And it's funny because high performers, once they put our system in place, when you first start, they're like, oh, I want to do that because I want to do so much more.
Yeah.
And then they start doing our system and they go, wait a minute. I don't need to do as much.
That's exactly right.
I'm still getting the same results, but now that I have this system and a solution to actually optimize what I'm doing,
Yeah.
It's
free
not
up
as
so much
stressful.
time.
It's not as frustrating, and I'm able to actually function the way we need to.
Yeah.
And it comes down, we have an 80-20 principle of planning that just states that 80% of your life you can plan, 20% you can't.
Okay.
However, if you don't take care of the 80, the 20 feels like 100.
Yes.
And that's the feeling of overwhelm.
Yeah.
It's when you have a minority part of your life that feels like a majority, but it's not. The reason why we're able to function with Natalie the way we can is because 80% of our life that we can plan, we do plan.
Right.
So when a curveball comes our way, we have 80% of our life in order.
So when that curveball comes, do you have a pre-planned plan?
Yeah, so we call it maintenance mode. So maintenance mode, it's not pre-planned because we don't know when that stuff's coming. It's once it comes, we go into maintenance mode.
Okay.
And maintenance mode is strictly just no growth. All balls that are in the air stay in the air, but no growth. So, for example, if we had this scheduled during maintenance mode and Nat was stable, I'd still come. But I wouldn't try to, if I was trying to like book you, get you to come on as a client, I wouldn't be making phone calls to you that week to try to get you to close.
You're not loading anything more onto your
But
plan.
we're not letting anything drop, which is key.
Yeah.
So me or Maria, like, hey, Maria's got to go do this. I have to do this. We kind of sit there, and the way we plan, she does her week, I do my week. Then on Sunday we come together and we talk through our weeks. The reason we do that is I was amazed at how little I knew about my wife. I didn't know what she wanted. I didn't know what she was trying to do every single week. I didn't know what was important to her. And there was a time where I was talking with a couple buddies of mine about providing. That's my job. My job is to provide. And she doesn't get it. My job is to provide. And somebody asked me, they said, what's her definition of provide? Mm-hmm. I went, whoa. I thought I was supposed to go kill the meat, bring it home. So I asked her. She's like, man, I just like you to be home for dinner. Like, I'd like you to be with the family. I'm like, yeah, but I don't make money being with the family. And she's like, I don't care about that. And I was like, yeah, but if I don't go, she's like, no, she's like, I'm not stupid. I get it. But I'd rather you be with us than be working 80 hours a week. And when it comes to providing and supporting and doing things for other people like that, there's a lot of times that we need to ask them, what is it that they want in order to actually give them what they need. So with Maria, when we started doing this, I would plan and she would plan and we'd come together and have a conversation. And I would be amazed that all she wanted to do was be able to get to the gym. Yeah. And I'm sitting here going, yeah, but I got to work. And she's like, all right, talking like 4 days a week for an hour. So can we make that? And I now make that a priority.
Yeah.
Maria coming to the gym is a priority in our life.
Yep.
Because it means that much to her.
Right.
And it should be.
Right.
So.
And it'll cause a lot of resentment if you don't have
Absolutely.
that, right? I mean, because you're like, I'm literally only asking for that.
It's very little what people sometimes ask for you. And if you can understand what is it that people truly want, you can give them what they want because it doesn't take a ton of your time.
Yeah.
It's the same concept in like living a balanced life, which I think is a garbage concept. It should be thrown out. When we work with clients, the work-life balance, that's not allowed to be used ever.
Yeah, it's good.
Doesn't exist. It never will exist. It shouldn't exist. That's not how we were meant to be. What we call it is we're working with either work-life integration, but when it comes to the balance side of it, is your life's a constant ebb and flow.
That's right.
You're gonna have ups and downs all day long, and you need to be able to push yourself to be able to deal with the ups and downs over here, so you can come back on the next day to be able to do it again every single time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, nothing in life is balanced, right? Breathing is in and out. It's not in the middle all the time, right? So like, that's how I equate to what you just kind of said. And we're gonna wrap up here. I know you get you back to sleep, bro. Life is, you call it maintenance mode. Sometimes you're breathing in. When you're breathing in, you're gathering. It's slow. It's calm. You're absorbing. You're creating ammunition. You're getting yourself ready, right? When you breathe out, you push, you go, you fucking take on more shit. You create, you go. You only have so much air until the air is gone. And then you got to do what? You got to stop and you got to breathe back in. You got to slow down, stop, regather, reaccumulate, And if you can get that structure in your life and be okay with that, neither one of those causes you conflict in your mind.
Right.
You don't freak out when you take a day to yourself to regroup and have some fun and this or that. But then you also don't freak out that you just spent 14 hours working on something. But it all belongs where it belongs.
Right.
And it shouldn't bleed over to the other stuff.
It's good.
Matt, brother, real quick, tell the audience, I want them to know how they can get your stuff and how they can learn more about what you do and how you do.
Yeah, so they can go to lifepulseinc.com. They can follow us on social at lifepulseinc. And they can reach out directly to me, Matt at lifepulseinc.com.
Okay.
Happy to help in any way we can.
Hell yeah, dude. I think everybody listening who's trying to accomplish literally anything should do that, because you've helped me a ton, dude, and I couldn't be more appreciative of you. I appreciate you more than words can probably explain. So
appreciate it.
Thank you, dude.
Always, brother.
Thanks for coming, and all of you go do something. All right, bye.